Many different stories use different POVs to tell their characters apart. Very often, each individual character will say things a certain way or have a specific type of accent or language tick that serves to separate them from the rest of the cast. This isn't just something that books use, but TV shows do this as well, with the purpose being to give their characters a more three-dimensional feel and to signal to the audience that there are major differences between character to character. However, books tend to take this a step further because they give us the ability to actually be inside different characters' heads. While this can be something that elevates the story and characters, this concept of being in our characters' heads poses a new kind of challenge for the writer. How do you differentiate the way one character thinks from another? How does each character structure sentences subconsciously? How does each character describe events? Better yet, how do two separate characters describe the same event from two different perspectives inside their own individual minds? I hope you're starting to see how complex this starts to become. And one thing that I really do adore about George R.R. Martin is his ability to pull off dozens of different perspectives at the same time. And this is mainly due to how masterfully he uses his own linguistic ability while writing all these different types of characters. Let's go over some examples. So George's favorite character to write is Tyrion. He often says Tyrion is the character most like himself, so I believe this is where George likes to push his writing chops to the absolute maximum. Tyrion is super witty, often constructing complex thoughts and sentences filled with bigger words, often highlighting sarcasm, spite, and humor. Tyrion also tends to over-explain and overanalyze situations. Primarily during A Clash of Kings, when Tyrion is Hand of the King, George takes the time to really let Tyrion thrive in the power, with him scheming at all times, reading constantly, and always describing all of his actions and the actions of the people around him with this air of immense intelligence. Specifically when writing these chapters, you can feel George trying to make Tyrion sound as intelligent and witty as possible, making his chapters very unique and especially different to many of his other cast members. Now, I would like to go over a very different example, Bran. George often says that Bran is the character whose chapters give him the most difficulty while writing, mainly due to the fact that writing the chapters in the head of a child is very difficult. Since Bran is so young, George is forced to sort of slow down and use smaller words and phrases. Bran can come off being sort of simple-minded to some fans because of this, but unfortunately for them, it's very well done and makes a lot of sense given the context. Bran's sense of wonder, confusion, and often simpler sentence structure and thought structure makes sense and is realistic for a younger character in A Song of Ice and Fire. And this ability to actually characterize Bran's thoughts in his head with a proper scope of a child serves to make Bran's thoughts feel very different and unique, especially compared to a character on the opposite side of the spectrum, such as Tyrion Lannister. Now, I think the most impressive character, in terms of how far George has to push his own linguistic skill, is with Sansa. Sansa is a very unique character in the story, because she has the perspective and personality of someone that George definitely isn't, and probably never was. Sansa, throughout the story, goes on a very powerful and strong arc of learning and discovering the powers lying within her own femininity. With that being said, when we are in Sansa's head, George finds a way to let us really feel like we are in the head of a hyper-feminine woman who is slowly coming to terms and learning the truths of the world. When we first meet Sansa in A Game of Thrones, her inner monologues almost feel like her head is in the clouds, constantly talking in these elegant sentences, almost as if she's trying to match her thinking to the fairy tales that she still very much believes. But as the story progresses, and Sansa starts to become more in tune with reality, her sentence structure and lines of thinking start to change alongside her, with her monologues getting a bit shorter, a bit sharper, and a bit sadder, showing that not only has she changed as a character, but especially in comparison to her other cast members, she's developed an incredibly unique perspective on the world around her. all made better and more apparent due to George R.R. Martin's linguistic skill in having the character uniquely describe her own situation and the way it relates to the world around her. And since I'm still in my first read of A Song of Ice and Fire, there are still some really interesting POVs that I know I haven't gotten to yet. But so far, more than really anything else in the story, George's linguistic skill is out of this world. And I honestly feel that it is one of the most underrated and most underappreciated things about his writing. And for those of you that have been subbed to my channel for a while and wonder what happened to my Song of Ice and Fire content, get ready because it's coming back in full force. And who knows, if the Winds of Winter drops anytime soon, this might just become a permanent A Song of Ice and Fire channel, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But until then, thank you all for watching, and hope you all have an amazing day. Peace.